Phew. Ever get that feeling when you open your cloud bill? Like, did I really use that much? Well, today we're going to dive deep into how to make those bills less of a mystery and more of a success story. We're talking all about FinOps.
Yeah, and it's not even just about deciphering invoices or anything like that. It's really more about changing how we even think about cloud spending at every level.
Okay, so it's like bigger than just saving a few bucks here and there.
Oh, way bigger. FinOps is more like a whole framework, a set of practices. It's how organizations really get a grip on their cloud costs, but also how they align those costs with actual business value. It's kind of like the difference between, just randomly throwing ingredients into a pot or
Right.
carefully following a recipe to create something amazing.
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
Yep.
No more digital potluck. We're talking like gourmet cloud strategy.
Exactly. And the recipe we're diving into today, it's built on 6 key elements: principles, personas, phases, maturity, domains, and capabilities.
Okay,
Now, I know that sounds a bit jargony.
it's a tad, yeah. What I find fascinating, though, is that even the structure emphasizes collaboration, right?
Yeah.
You got these different elements working together. It's not just like a tech thing or a finance thing.
You've hit the nail on the head. FinOps is all about breaking down silos. It's about getting tech teams, finance folks, even procurement, everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
How are we using these cloud resources and why?
So before anyone can even think about ordering from the cloud menu, we're making sure everyone agrees on the budget, the dietary restrictions, who's doing the dishes afterwards.
Ah, that's a great way to put it. And today, we're zeroing in on one capability within this framework called Intersecting Disciplines. Because here's the thing, FinOps doesn't exist in a vacuum. It has to work hand in hand with other areas of IT if you want it to be truly effective.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. What are some of those intersections that are like crucial for folks to understand?
Well, let's think about IT asset management, or ITAM for short.
Yeah.
This used to be all about physical servers, software licenses, right? But now, so many of those licenses are in the cloud, often bundled with services. And FinOps helps you make sure you're not paying for cloud licenses that you already have elsewhere, and that you're using the ones you do have efficiently.
So no more stockpiling digital licenses just in case.
Right, exactly.
And I imagine it gets even more complex when you factor in how quickly cloud environments change.
Absolutely. And that's actually why that phases element of FinOps I mentioned is so important. It acknowledges that organizations are going to be at different stages of maturity when it comes to implementing these practices, right? Some might just be starting out, that's what we call the crawl phase.
Okay.
They're just focused on getting basic visibility into their cloud costs, who's using what.
So if crawl is about figuring out what you've got, what's walk look like?
Walk is where you start to see more collaboration. Teams are sharing data, they're developing a common language around cloud costs, maybe even starting to put some basic governance processes in place. They might be investing in some dedicated FinOps tools, things to help them track and manage spending more effectively.
Okay, so they're not just looking at the menu anymore. Now they're starting to plan out their meals and maybe even track calories.
Precisely. And this is where that intersecting disciplines idea becomes even more critical, because as you start to walk your FinOps journey, you realize that IT service management, or ITSM, that plays a huge role too. How you design, deliver, and manage your IT services, a lot of which are now cloud-based, has a direct impact on your cloud spending.
It's like realizing that your appetizer choice at the cloud restaurant is going to impact your main course and dessert options.
Exactly. You got to think about the entire service lifecycle, from provisioning resources to managing capacity, even things like data transfer costs. Those can really sneak up on you.
Data transfer the hidden fees of the cloud world. It sounds like FinOps, when implemented well, helps you avoid those gotcha moments.
Absolutely. And it's not just about surprises. It's about making sure cost consciousness is baked into every decision, every service rollout, every aspect of your cloud strategy.
So it's about building a culture of cost awareness rather than just reacting to bills after the fact. This is where I think things get really interesting, because it's not just about the technology anymore. It's about how people and processes adapt.
You're spot on. And we also can't forget about the security implications too, especially with this IT asset management in the cloud.
Right, because if you mismanage those cloud resources, even unintentionally, that can open up some pretty significant security vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
So tell me more about how FinOps helps navigate this whole area.
It's all about working with those security teams. You have to understand the risks, build in the right safeguards from the get-go, for example. Imagine you've got 100 software licenses. But your FinOps analysis, working with ITAM, reveals only 50 are actually being used in the cloud. Well, now that's a potential security risk and wasted spend.
So instead of just hoping for the best, you're proactively identifying and mitigating those risks while also optimizing your spending. It's like a win-win.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that this intersection of FinOps and security, it often leads to a more secure and cost-effective cloud environment. You're not just throwing money at the problem, you're making strategic investments based on data and analysis.
It's like you're saying, by just shining a light on your cloud usage, you're not only spotting cost savings, but you're making the whole thing, the whole infrastructure more secure.
Exactly. And this brings us to another really crucial intersection, one that's becoming more and more important: sustainability.
Okay, so how does FinOps play into the whole environmental impact of cloud computing? Help me connect those dots.
Yeah, it's easy to think of the cloud as this, intangible thing, but those data centers that are powering our digital lives, they take a lot of energy.
That's true.
FinOps is, at its heart, about efficiency.
Right.
So by optimizing your cloud usage, you're eliminating waste, maybe even choosing more energy efficient cloud providers or services. You can actually significantly reduce your carbon footprint.
So it's a win for your budget and a win for the planet, like choosing the locally sourced organic option on the cloud menu.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears for a second and talk about that run phase of the FinOps maturity journey. What's it look like when an organization's really got this down?
Run is where FinOps becomes fully integrated into the organizational DNA.
Right.
It's not just a set of practices, it's how they operate. Every decision is made with cost consciousness in mind right from the start. They might be using advanced analytics to predict and optimize spending, probably even automated a lot of their FinOps processes.
So they've got this well-oiled machine that's constantly analyzing data, adjusting course, making sure they're getting the most bang for their buck, so to speak. But how do they actually get to run? What are some practical steps?
Well, it all comes back to that phased approach, right? Remember, crawl, walk, run. So in that crawl phase, a big part of it is simply identifying all your cloud resources, taking inventory. This might involve working with your cloud provider to understand your usage patterns, or maybe using some basic reporting tools to just see where the money's going.
So no need to start sprinting out of the gate.
Exactly. You've got to build that foundation first. Then as you move into walk, you can start implementing more formal processes. Maybe that's setting up tagging policies to track costs by department or project, or introducing showback or chargeback, to increase accountability.
So you're not just saying, hey, we spent a lot on the cloud last month. It's here's exactly where that money went, and here's who to talk to about it.
Precisely. And as you get more comfortable with those practices, then you can start exploring more of those advanced FinOps capabilities, like automated cost optimization or predictive analytics.
So you're leveling up your FinOps game as you go, moving from manual tracking to more sophisticated automation and insights.
Exactly. And this is where that whole collaborative aspect that we talked about before is so crucial, because to really nail FinOps, you need buy-in, not just from tech teams, but from finance, from leadership, really, across the organization.
Yeah, because if only the IT department's thinking about cloud costs, it's going to be an uphill battle to make any real changes.
Exactly. It's about building a culture where everyone understands the value of FinOps and how it helps the entire organization succeed.
And that takes time.
Right.
And communication, and probably a good bit of education along the way.
Absolutely. And that's why having those clear phases, crawl, walk, run, is so helpful. It gives organizations that roadmap that way to gradually build up their FinOps maturity and adapt their processes as they go.
It's about progress, not perfection. But I'm curious, what are some common pitfalls, some challenges that come up on this FinOps journey? What should people watch out for?
One of the biggest challenges is just getting started. It can feel overwhelming, especially for large organizations with these really complex cloud environments. That's why it's so important to start small. Focus on one specific area, one project, and build from there.
Don't try to boil the ocean on day one.
Sure.
Start with a small pot of water, see what happens.
Exactly. Another challenge is, resistance to change. FinOps often requires organizations to rethink how they've always done things, right? Potentially shift some responsibilities around.
And people don't always love that, especially when it comes to their jobs.
Exactly. That's why that communication, that education piece, it's so important. Help people understand the why behind FinOps. Show them how it can actually make their jobs easier and more fulfilling by giving them more control.
So it's not just about throwing a new tool or a new process at the problem. It's about bringing people along on the journey.
Precisely. And When it's done well, that journey, it can lead to a much more collaborative, cost-effective, and even more innovative cloud environment.
Now, we've talked a lot about the technical side of FinOps, but what about the human element?
Well, that's where those personas come into play. Remember those. Different people in an organization are going to interact with FinOps in different ways. It's important to understand their roles, their responsibilities.
So it's not just a bunch of robots managing cloud costs. It's real people making decisions, taking action. Give me an example. How do those personas play out in the real world?
Absolutely. Let's say you're a developer. You're working on this new cloud native application, laser focused on building an amazing product, but you also need to be thinking about the cost implications of your decisions. That's where FinOps comes in. It's giving you the tools and the guidance to make cost-aware decisions right from the start.
So instead of just spinning up a bunch of servers and hoping for the best, you're thinking about things like right-sizing your infrastructure,
Yeah.
maybe choosing cost-effective storage options, even optimizing your code.
Exactly. You're empowered to be a FinOps practitioner, even if you don't have that specific job title.
It's like almost like you're saying everyone on the team, anyone who like touches the cloud even a little bit, they have a responsibility to think about the costs.
You got it. And when you have that shared understanding, that whole culture of thinking about the cost, that's when you can really start to optimize everything. Not just the spending, but your entire strategy for the cloud.
This has been honestly really insightful. We covered a ton today. We talked about the basic ideas behind FinOps, how it all connects with security, even sustainability, and then that human element of managing the cloud. But before we wrap up, I want to bring it back to our listeners one more time.
Let's say someone's hearing this for the first time, right? They're thinking, okay, cool, but where do I even start? What's like one tangible thing they could do today to kick off their own FinOps journey? That's a great question. I always say the most important first step is just asking questions. Like, if you're in IT, go talk to your finance people. See how they're already handling those cloud costs. Or if you're like a manager, ask your team, how are they using the cloud? What tools or processes do they even have in place to track things, to optimize? Just start there.
It's about opening those lines of communication, raising that awareness.
Exactly. From there, there's so much out there you can start exploring. Check out that FinOps Foundation website. They've got tons of case studies, best practices. They even have certifications if you want to, really dive deep.
So like a whole support system, a whole community for folks who want to learn more and connect with people on the same journey.
It's true. And honestly, the more we can all share what we know, learn from each other, the better we'll all be at using the cloud effectively and keeping those costs under control.
So well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our FinOps deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed this exploration of, well, everything cloud and money, and that you're feeling ready to start your own FinOps journey.
It's been awesome exploring all this with you.
Until next time, everyone, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those cloud bills manageable.